Jimmy Thibault, former music festival promoter and owner of the 330-acre Camp Zoe in rural Missouri, has become the first concert venue promoter sent to prison for drug use by other people on facilities he operated. The plea agreement Thibault signed a year ago contained an explicit acknowledgement that Thibault never bought or sold drugs.
People went to Schwagstock for, first and foremost, a musical experience. The music was always the catalyst. That's like, oh, why are you going? Well, there's some great music down there. It's the music of the Grateful Dead. It was also a great social experience.
The people, the vibe was uncomparable to any other experience I've ever had in my life. It was
one of the most interesting cultural institutions of Missouri, I have to say.
There are so many memories that I hold dear there, and meeting some of the most amazing people that I've ever met, that I'm still friends with to this day, that I consider family. My husband even proposed at Zoe.
Just an amazing place where people went to feel truly free. That's how I felt when I was there.
The whole place was just absolutely beautiful. It was kind of neat how they had it set up. They had the huge stage down there at the bottom. Sit on the hillside, watch the music, watch the concerts. They also had another smaller stage that they could watch and have different people coming in. The whole design, the whole concept of it was really neat. But it was just the enormous drug problem, drug promotion, and drug use that they had is what turned our community off completely.
I thought as a business we interacted well. We created a lot of cash flow for the area. We generated a lot of sales tax money for the local Shannon County.
It was adding to the revenue of the county, which I operate my law enforcement sales tax. So whenever these outside tourists or whoever they would be would spend money in Dent County, it would help our revenue, which ultimately helps my budget at the next year.
I know the Walmart in Salem, they once told me that they grossed an average of an extra $30 or $30,000 above what they usually would do on Schwagstock weekends. So I know we had a positive financial impact. We did employ a number of people that lived in the area, so we were providing some jobs.
2005, I remember being at a Schwagstock at Zoe, and while the Schwag were playing, Jimmy presented the crowd with a huge plaque, and it was kind of a celebratory moment. The reason he did this was because the Missouri legislature had awarded him with this award for entrepreneurial spirit. So in 2005, the Missouri legislature was not only allowing Schwagstocks and Camp Zoe to have festivals and concerts, but it was supporting it and proud of the effort. I mean, this was, again, economic opportunity for a local area in Missouri.
Of course, there were some people that didn't like what we were doing because they didn't understand it or they didn't know the details, or it was just a cultural shock thing.
So it's interesting that it was this very positive sanctioned thing by the government and then became a target for investigation.
For a period of 4 years leading up to the November 1st federal raid on Camp Zoe, Missouri State Highway Patrol undercover operatives abetted the sale of controlled substances by offering to purchase many of the hard drugs Thibault had prohibited.
And then it was a few months later that I got an indictment for 21 U.S.C. 856, which is managing a drug-involved premises.
A lot of the people within the city would go down there during their festivals and actually get all their drugs from the festival itself. When I was down there, I noticed that there was several the vendors that they had down there. It was all promoting drug use, promoting drugs and all this other stuff, and that was an extreme turnoff for me.
Different kind of prescription drugs. It was an endless supply. A lot of it was brought in, which doesn't help my county because we deal with, when we'd make arrests, these people weren't from here. So ultimately, when we're trying to hold them here and thinking that they're not going to return, we've got to hold them in jail until their court dates. And if they bond, there's a good chance that we'll never see them again because, like I said, they're all over the country.
Jimmy asked law enforcement to have a presence within the festival grounds, and was denied this.
I don't think anyone disputes the fact that Jimmy and others with Camp Zoe specifically requested help from the Dent County Sheriff's Office. They asked for the sheriff to send deputies onto the grounds and help to police the events that took place there.
Usually what ended up happening was B&D staff would be inside as security, and there would usually be Highway Patrol and Salem PD roadblocks.
And they started having road checkpoints or drug checkpoints, and we was finding lots of people that would have recreational drugs with small amounts. So then the next thing you know, making traffic stops, they would hand you a card, and it would say, "This is my lawyer's card, and you need to contact him." And it just got carried away. There was lots of weekends. There would be 100 or better arrests made because the drugs that were involved.
I remember I had to go to court because of an empty pipe, and every time I went, everybody there was from Schwagstock.
What was that like?
It was a zoo. Yeah, they were just raking in the money, raking it in. It didn't matter if you had a lawyer or not. Everybody was getting the same thing. Slapped with the fine and 2 years probation.
And I thought the roadblocks were enough.
Instead, the Sheriff's Department, cooperating with other outside authorities, the Highway Patrol, the federal DEA, and others, chose instead to send agents onto the grounds who were not in uniform, who made no attempt themselves to stop the illegal activity that was taking place, but rather just documented it and then went back and urged prosecutors to file charges against Jimmy Tebow.
I'm a police officer and a paramedic. Been a paramedic for 30 years plus, police officer for 15 years, and I worked undercover for a little bit. And so we got involved with these not only as caregivers, but also as a police officer, or as someone who works undercover, just walking through and seeing how everybody was reacting and stuff. And it's a true eye-opener. And there's things that happen inside that camp that just a normal person could never imagine that were taking place. And so law enforcement was doing their best to try to shut it down.
And I don't mean to be making excuses, but I wasn't as in tune with what was happening with the event. I was way in tune with what was happening musically. And so I hired a site operations director, a general manager, and they were in charge of all that. But in the end, it was up to me, since I'm the guy writing the checks, the property's in my name. I should have been more on it as far as keeping an eye on the employees, making sure they were doing what they were supposed to. Apparently the security wasn't as strict as they should be.
The amount of drugs that came through town was absolutely unreal. 2 or 3 years later, I actually went down there and talked to them, or not really talked to them, but went down there just to kind of see from my own eyes what's going on.
The motivation of some people was to show these dirty hippies who was boss.
They were supposed to have a large drug shipment coming in, and that's always how it goes, rumor control. And so they sent some of us in, and we would walk through the campground. A specific night, we was walking through the campground trying to find a person that was, there would be a line of people if there was a large amount of drugs in any one spot, and it wasn't. But what I will tell you is that
the federal agencies, and I'm not just talking about the IRS, I'm talking about the DEA, Homeland Security was there at the Zoe raid. They decided that Jimmy was making his money through an illegal means.
But they were counting on the people doing drugs just as much as Jimmy was counting on them coming to see the music.
But I really knew there was something wrong when the property got raided.
There were big German Shepherd dogs, and
there was
every letter of the alphabet. There was IRS, and there was a hazmat truck there. What in the Sam hell was a hazmat truck needed in Zoe for?
They had two huge RVs. One of them, like she said, one of them had all the communication equipment on it, satellite dishes, the antennas, the camera that was rotating, taking pictures of everybody.
And they had a number of drug sales. From what I saw in the evidence, it was a lot of small amounts. I think in the end they only got 2 or 3 ounces of marijuana, but that was in 15 different incidences where there was a dealer selling quarter bags of marijuana on the property. And in some of the cases it was the same guy.
This is not something where they said that he was actively involved in anything. The claim was just that he knew about this and didn't shut down the campsite. Well, I mean, that could be said of pretty much anywhere. Name me a place where there are thousands of people in this country that there is not drug activity going on, yet we don't say that all those places have to be shut down.
In addition to losing his property through asset forfeiture, Tabo will spend 30 months in prison.
Then the federal case, I went to federal prison and they took the property, of which at the time I only owed like $374,000 on the property. I believe it sold at auction for like $700,000. I probably could have sold it for close to $1 million had I not got busted, so I lost several $100,000 in equity.
Property does not have the same sort of civil and constitutional rights that a person has. So for instance, at trial, a person being accused of a crime has the presumption of innocence. You have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the person committed some crime and had some intent to do so. But if it's asset forfeiture, you don't have to actually show that. All you have to show that it's more likely than not, a preponderance of the evidence, that this property was involved in the crime, and it doesn't matter if the owner knew that or not.
Federal government doesn't require that the person whose property is to be taken be convicted of any crime whatsoever. And so, again, in relative terms, the Missouri forfeiture laws are far better than the federal ones, and of course it was the federal forfeiture process that took Jimmy Tebow's property from him.
I can name any concert venue in America, and I can assure you there will be drug use at those locations. So it's absolutely ludicrous that one person will be targeted by the government for drug use of thousands of people at that person's property when other business owners, other concert venue owners are not targeted.
It was a Grateful Dead cover band having jam bands come down there. So I think it was largely motivated out of the specific type of people that were coming to Camp Zoe and not any specific violation.
They targeted the long hairs, the counterculture, the people who seem to be outside the mainstream. Obviously they're not going after the Cardinals in Busch Stadium. They're going after the folks who seem to be part of the counterculture.
Jimmy's free. Even when he was locked up, he was free. He's a free-minded individual. They don't like free thinkers. They don't like people off the grid.
When it shut down, it was really sad. It was it wasn't a regular campground. It wasn't just a campground. It was a magical place, and it was a place we went, to see these people that we only got to see at Zoe, and now that it's not open anymore, it's
kind of be hard to find something better than what Zoe represents to me.
My heart got broken whenever it was shut down. I couldn't believe it, and I thought it was unreal.
It was just a beautiful place. We've met people that, because of personal situations, that we've become family.
So I think that if there's ever a learning thing out of this that came from me, who grew up in this area, is it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort for these local people to be able to make ends meet. And I think that this here family pretty well lost their career or their livelihood because of overzealousness and people taking advantage of their good-heartedness.
What do you think is going to happen to Camp Zoe now that it's closed? Schwagstock is closed.
Well, now it's a conservation area, so they're going to open it up, and people will be able to go out there and smoke pot and do drugs, and they won't shut it down because they know people's going to go out there and do that because they're just hoping to give them a ticket and write them up, make some money off them. But yeah, it'd be a good thing. Let's go down there and get high, get a ticket, and then they have knowledge that people's going down there and getting high. And they need to be shut down and thrown in prison.
While I was in federal prison, I took a program called RDAP, Residential Drug Abuse Program, which led to a sentence reduction and gave me more halfway house time than time in the prison. So did 6 months in a halfway house in St. Louis, about a year in Yankton Federal Prison in Yankton, South Dakota, and lost the property, 330 acres, lost all the equity into it. But I still retain my soul and my musical ability and the joy of life and the drive to continue to play music.